Hello. My name is Lucas. I'm 25, still living in the same split-level house on Maple Crest Drive where I grew up, just outside Columbus, Ohio. The basement bedroom is mine. Same twin bed, same creaky floorboard by the door. Most mornings I wake up to the smell of my mom's coffee and the sound of her TV news turned up too loud. I work part-time at O'Reilly Auto Parts on Route 33, the kind of place where your hands never really get clean no matter how hard you scrub. I'm good with engines, good with my hands, good at staying quiet. People say I'm steady. I used to think that was a compliment. 2 years ago, my girlfriend of almost 3 years, she was 22, same as me back then, woke up one morning, packed a duffel bag while I was in the shower, and left a post-it on the fridge that just said, "I need to breathe." No fight, no warning, just gone. I still find pieces of her sometimes. A hair tie under the couch, the faint vanilla of her shampoo in one of my hoodies. After that, I stopped expecting anything to last. So when my mom knocked on my bedroom door that Saturday and said, "Claire across the street needs help with her car, you mind?" I figured it was another routine favor. Claire Harper, 38, moved in 6 months ago after her husband walked out. People in the neighborhood love to talk about her like she's a cautionary tale. Used to have the perfect life, perfect husband, perfect smile at the block parties. Now she keeps the curtains drawn and the porch light off. They whisper the way people do when someone falls from grace. I'd only ever seen her from a distance. Tall, dark hair usually twisted up, moving like she was trying not to take up too much space. I grabbed my toolbox and crossed the cul-de-sac. Her Honda sat in the driveway looking tired, check engine light glowing orange. Claire was waiting by the open hood, arms folded under an old gray cardigan, even though it was warm. She didn't say much while I worked, just watched with the kind of quiet that feels heavier than words. I found the problem fast. Bad oxygen sensor, easy fix. 20 minutes later, the engine purred like it hadn't in years. I wiped my hands on a rag and straightened up. Should be good now. She nodded, eyes on the grease still streaked across my knuckles. The late afternoon sun cut across the driveway and lit her face in a way that made the faint lines around her mouth look like secrets. Then she smiled, small, almost careful, and asked the question that tilted my whole world. "If I invited you in for tea?" Her voice was low, steady. "Would you dare?" I swear the street noise vanished. My pulse kicked hard against my ribs. It wasn't a casual thank you. It was a line drawn in the air between neighbor and something else entirely. I managed a rough laugh. "Just tea?" She didn't blink. "Tea?" she said. "Unless you want something more." The rag slipped from my fingers and hit the concrete. I felt the weight of every whisper I'd ever heard about her, every warning my mom never quite said out loud, every scar I carried from being left without a goodbye. None of it mattered in that moment. The only thing that existed was the half-open door behind her and the question hanging between us like smoke. I swallowed. "What time?" Her smile widened just enough to show she'd been holding her breath too. "7." I picked up my toolbox, hands shaking now for reasons that had nothing to do with engines. As I walked back across the street, I could feel her watching me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Something had already shifted, like a gear finally slipping into place after years of grinding. That evening, I stood in front of my mirror in a clean shirt, heart hammering the same rhythm it had the first time I ever kissed someone and meant it. My mom called from the kitchen, "Don't stay too late, honey." She had no idea. At 7 o'clock sharp, I crossed the street again. Claire opened the door before I could knock. The porch light was on now, soft and golden. She stepped aside. I walked in. And I stayed. I crossed the threshold and the door clicked shut behind me like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't known I was writing. The house smelled faintly of bergamot and something warmer. Cinnamon, maybe. Claire took my jacket without asking, hung it on a hook by the door like it belonged there. She had changed into a soft black sweater and jeans, barefoot, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger than 38 and older than the rumors all at once. "Tea's already steeping," she said, leading me through the living room. The furniture was still half arranged, boxes tucked in corners like she hadn't decided whether she was staying or just passing through. We ended up in the kitchen, a small island between us, 2 mugs waiting. She poured. Steam curled up and carried the scent straight into the hollow place behind my ribs. We didn't speak for the first minute, just the soft clink of spoons against ceramic. Then she leaned her hip against the counter and looked at me, really looked, the way no one had in years. You didn't have to say yes, you know. I know, I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. She nodded like that settled something. Most people would have made an excuse. Too young, too complicated, too whatever the neighborhood is saying about me this week. I wrapped both hands around the warm mug. I stopped listening to the neighborhood a long time ago. That earned the first real smile I'd seen from her. It was small, crooked, and it cracked something open in the room. She started talking first. Not about the weather or the car or safe things. She talked about the silence that had lived in this house for a whole year before her husband finally packed his suitcase. How they'd slept in the same bed but might as well have been on different continents. How she used to set an extra place at dinner out of habit long after he stopped coming home for it. I thought if I just kept everything calm, she said, tracing the rim of her mug, if I didn't make waves, he'd remember why he married me. Turns out silence isn't glue, it's just space. And space is easy to walk away from. I felt it in my throat before I heard myself answer. I know exactly what that space feels like. She looked up then, waited. I told her about the post-it note, about waking up to water running in the bathroom and coming out to an empty apartment, about standing in the kitchen holding that stupid yellow square like it was supposed to explain everything. I told her how I kept replaying every fight we never had, every conversation that ended too soon, trying to find the moment I should have fought harder. I even told her how I still slept on my side of the bed because moving to the middle felt like admitting defeat. When I finished, the kitchen was quieter than before. Claire hadn't looked away once. You were 23, she said softly. That's not a crime, Lucas. Being left isn't proof you weren't enough. I laughed, but it came out cracked. Feels like it sometimes. She reached across the island and brushed her fingers over the scar on my right knuckle, an old one from a timing chain job gone wrong. Some hurts don't come with explanations. They just come. Her touch was light, but it burned. I didn't pull away. We talked until the tea went cold and the windows turned black. She told me about the nights she sat on the back porch after he left, drinking wine straight from the bottle because pouring it into a glass felt too much like hope. I told her about driving aimlessly after work just to keep from going home to the quiet. We traded stories the way other people trade phone numbers, careful at first, then all at once. At some point, she moved around the island and stood beside me. Not touching, just close enough that I could feel the heat coming off her skin. Close enough that when she spoke again, I felt the words more than heard them. I don't know what this is, she said. I just know I haven't felt seen in a very long time. I turned my head. Our faces were inches apart. I could see the faint freckles across her nose I'd never noticed from across the street. Could see the way her pulse beat in her throat. I see you, I said. Simple. True. She closed her eyes for a second like the words hurt in the best way. When she opened them again, they were bright, almost fierce. Then stay a little longer. I stayed until the clock in the hallway struck midnight. We never kissed. We barely touched. But when I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door and let her hand rest on my arm longer than necessary. Thank you, she whispered, for not treating me like something broken. I wanted to tell her she wasn't broken, that some things get taken apart so they can be put back together stronger. But the words felt too big, so I just nodded. Outside, the air was cool and the street was empty. I crossed back to my mom's house with the taste of bergamot still on my tongue, and the weight of Claire's stories settling into my bones like they belonged there. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way she looked when she said, I see you, like someone who'd been invisible for years and suddenly wasn't. I was already in too deep and I hadn't even kissed her yet. The days after that first night blurred together in a way I'd never known before. I'd find excuses to walk past her house, taking out trash that didn't need taking out, checking the mailbox twice, offering to mow the strip of lawn between our driveways. Claire never made it easy or hard. She just opened the door when I showed up and let me in like it was the most natural thing in the world. We'd sit on her couch with mugs of tea or sometimes something stronger, talking until the streetlights came on. No labels, no promises, just the quiet understanding that whatever this was, it was growing. But the bigger it got, the louder everything else became. My mom noticed first. She's got a sixth sense for anything that doesn't fit the script she's written for me. One night I came in after midnight and she was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, the same look she used to give me when I missed curfew in high school. "You've been over at Claire's a lot," she said. Not a question. I poured myself water just to have something to do with my hands. She needed help with a few things around the house. Uh-huh. Her voice was soft, but I heard the edge. "Lucas, she's 38. I'm aware. She's been through a divorce. People talk." I set the glass down harder than I meant to. "People always talk. Doesn't make them right." Mom's eyes narrowed. "I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying you're 25. You've got your whole life." "Mom." I cut her off, sharper than I meant. "I'm not a kid." She went quiet after that, but the silence wasn't forgiveness. It was waiting. Then came the guys at work. Jake, one of the older techs, caught me smiling at my phone. Claire had sent a picture of her cat knocking over a plant with the caption "Chaos Agent reporting for duty." He leaned over the counter and grinned like he'd caught me stealing. "That the divorcee from your street? Heard she's got a body that won't quit. You tapping that kid?" The wrench in my hand felt heavier all of a sudden. I pictured Claire the night she told me about sitting alone on her porch with a bottle of wine, thinking no one would ever look at her the same again. I pictured the way she flinched when she said the word old like it was a bruise. "She's not a punchline," I said. Jake laughed. "Relax, man. Just saying she's, 15 years older? That's a lot of mileage." I walked away before I did something I'd regret. But his words stuck like grease under fingernails, impossible to scrub clean. The worst part wasn't them, it was me. Every time I looked at Claire, I saw the years between us carved into little things. The faint lines at the corners of her eyes when she laughed, the way she sometimes rubbed her lower back after standing too long, the offhand comments about music I'd never heard of, or movies she'd seen in theaters when I was still in grade school. I started doing the math in my head like an idiot. When I'm 35, she'll be 48. When I'm 40, she'll be 53. When I'm 50, I'd catch myself staring at her hands, beautiful but not 25, and feel this sick twist in my gut, like I was robbing something, or being robbed. I couldn't decide which. One night I showed up later than usual. She opened the door and I could tell she'd been crying. Not dramatic. Claire doesn't do dramatic. Just red eyes and a tightness around her mouth. "Bad day?" I asked. She shrugged and stepped aside to let me in. We ended up on the couch, a careful foot of space between us. She picked at the sleeve of her sweater. "Mrs. Henderson from down the street stopped by with cookies," she said. "Told me she was worried about me being alone." Then spent 20 minutes hinting that maybe I should think about dating someone more appropriate for my stage of life. I felt my jaw clench. She doesn't get to decide what's appropriate for you. Claire gave a bitter laugh. "She's not wrong, Lucas. Look at us." I turned to face her fully. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm 38. I've been married. I have stretch marks and a mortgage and a cat that's older than some of your coworkers. She gestured vaguely at me like I was a walking reminder of everything she wasn't anymore. "You're 25. You should be out with girls who don't know what a VHS tape is." The words hit harder than Jake's jokes ever could. "Is that what you think this is?" I asked quietly. "Some midlife crisis fling?" "No." Her voice cracked. "But maybe it's what everyone else will think. Maybe it's what you'll think one day when you wake up and realize you settled for someone who's already halfway through the story." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her age was just a number, that the only thing that mattered was how I felt when I was with her, alive in a way I hadn't been since the post-it note. But the doubt had already crawled inside me and made a home. We sat there in the half-dark, the space between us wider than the couch. For the first time since that afternoon in her driveway, I wasn't sure what to say. Outside, a car passed with its headlights cutting across the curtains, and for a second, I saw us the way the neighborhood probably did. the quiet divorcee, and the kid from across the street who still lived with his mom. The math was brutal when you let it be. I left earlier than usual that night. Claire walked me to the door but didn't touch me. At home, I lay awake staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to my ceiling from when I was 10. I kept thinking about what Jake said, about what my mom didn't say, about the way Claire's voice shook when she called herself halfway through the story. I was falling for her so hard it scared me. And the scariest part wasn't the age difference, it was how much I was starting to believe they might all be right. A storm rolled in the following Thursday, the kind that knocks out power for half the county. The lights in our house flickered once, twice, then died. Mom lit candles and went to bed early, grumbling about the electric company. I sat on the porch steps watching the rain hammer the street, watching Claire's house go dark the same way mine had. Something pulled at me harder than worry. I grabbed 2 flashlights, a battery lantern, and the thick beeswax candle my mom keeps for emergencies, and I crossed the flooded cul-de-sac without an umbrella. Claire opened the door in an oversized sweatshirt, hair damp from the rain that had blown in through the cracked window. Her face was half lit by the streetlight outside, eyes red-rimmed again. She didn't ask why I was there, she just stepped aside. The house felt different in the dark, smaller, more honest. No hum of the refrigerator, no glow from the clock on the stove. Just rain on the roof and the soft hiss of the candle I set on the coffee table. We sat on the floor because the couch felt too far apart. Knees almost touching, shadows dancing across the walls. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was full. Then Claire laughed, small and broken. "I used to love storms," she said. "My husband hated them. Said they made him feel trapped." I guess he was right. I watched the candlelight flicker across her cheekbones. "You're not trapped tonight." She looked at me then, really looked, like she was trying to see past my skin to whatever was underneath. "Aren't I?" The question hung between us. I didn't have an answer. She pulled her knees to her chest. "I keep thinking about what you said the other night. About seeing me. I want to believe it, Lucas. God, I want to, but every time I get close, I hear all the voices. My own voice, loudest of all, telling me I'm too old for this. Too used. That one day you'll wake up and see the years I've got on you and wonder why you ever walked through that door." Her words cracked open the thing I'd been carrying since the night the guys at work laughed. I set the flashlight down and shifted closer until our knees finally touched. "I'm scared too," I said. My voice came out rough. "I'm scared that I'm not enough. That I'm just the kid who fixes cars and lives in his mom's basement. That you'll realize you deserve someone who's already got his shit together. Someone who doesn't have to Google half the references you make." She started to speak, but I kept going. "I do the math, Claire, every day. When I'm 40, you'll be 53. When I'm 50, you'll be 63. And every time the numbers hit me, I hate myself for letting them matter. Because they don't change the fact that when I'm with you, the world makes sense for the first time since someone left a Post-it on my fridge." A tear slid down her cheek, caught the candlelight like a spark. "You think I don't do the math, too? I look at you and see everything I thought I'd lost the chance to have. And then I look in the mirror and see everything that says I don't get to have it anymore." I reached out then, slow enough that she could pull away. She didn't. I cupped her face with both hands, thumbs brushing the tears from the corners of her eyes. "I'm not here because you're some fantasy," I said. "I'm here because when you talk, I want to listen for the rest of my life. Because when you laugh, it feels like the first good thing that's happened to me in years. Because the idea of walking away hurts more than any whisper from the neighbors ever could." She closed her eyes, leaned into my palm like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "I spent so long being the woman everyone wanted to be," she whispered. "Perfect house, perfect marriage, perfect smile. And no one ever asked what I wanted. No one ever stepped into the mess with me." "I'm in the mess," I said. "All the way." The candle guttered, throwing wild shadows across the room. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. Claire opened her eyes and looked at me, really looked, the way she had the first night in her kitchen. Only this time, there was no careful distance. She leaned forward and kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate, just certain. Like a decision finally made after months of hesitation. Her lips were soft, tasted faintly of salt from the tears. I kissed her back like I'd been waiting my whole life to do it right. When we pulled apart, foreheads still touching, she laughed once, quiet, wondering. "I'm terrified," she said. "Me too. But I'm more terrified of not doing this." I brushed her hair back from her face. "Then don't." The power stayed out for hours. We didn't move from the floor. Somewhere between the second and third kiss, the storm outside quieted to a steady rain. The candle burned lower, wax pooling gold on the table. And for the first time since I'd walked into her house that night months ago, neither of us was counting years or listening to whispers. We were just there. Completely, undeniably there. The weeks after the blackout felt different, like someone had turned the volume down on the world and up on us. We still didn't advertise anything, no hand-holding on the sidewalk, no couple photos. But we stopped pretending either. I'd come home from work and find Claire's car in our driveway, or Mom would come downstairs in the morning and find 2 coffee mugs in the sink instead of 1. She never said much, just raised an eyebrow and refilled the sugar bowl without comment. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they got louder. Mrs. Henderson dropped by one afternoon with a casserole and a lecture disguised as concern. Claire listened on the porch steps, arms wrapped around her knees, then thanked her for the food and closed the door. That night she told me she was tired of apologizing for existing. 2 nights later, someone knocked on her door after 11. I was there, half asleep on her couch with her head on my chest. She went to answer it while I stayed in the shadows. It was Mr. Lang from 3 houses down, drunk enough to be brave. "People are talking, Claire," he slurred. "That boy's young enough to be—" "Thank you for your concern," she cut in, voice calm, lethal. "But the only person who gets to decide what happens in this house is me." She shut the door, leaned her back against it, and started shaking. Not from fear, from fury. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my neck and whispered, "I'm done hiding." The next day, I told my mom everything. Not dramatic, just sat her down at the kitchen table and said, "I love her. This isn't a phase, it's the most real thing I've ever had." Mom looked at me for a long time, eyes soft in a way I hadn't seen since I was little. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "If she makes you happy, then bring her for dinner on Sunday. I'll make lasagna." That Sunday, Claire walked across the street holding a bottle of wine and a nervousness she tried to hide behind a smile. Mom hugged her at the door like she'd been waiting years for it. We ate at the same table where I used to do homework, and somewhere between the second helping and the coffee, the 3 of us became something that didn't need a name yet. Monday morning, I stopped by the florist on my way home from work and bought white daisies. Claire once told me they were ordinary but refused to die. When I walked into her kitchen, she was at the sink, sleeves rolled up, sunlight cutting across her back. I set the flowers on the counter and wrapped my arms around her from behind. "You don't have to walk back into who you were," I said against her hair. "Just walk toward me. That's all I've ever wanted." She turned in my arms, eyes shining, and kissed me slow and certain. No audience, no explanation required. We still don't know what tomorrow looks like. Maybe one day we'll pack up both houses and find a place that's only ours. Maybe we'll stay right here and let the neighborhood get used to the sight of us. Maybe the years will matter and maybe they won't. All I know is when I wake up next to her, the space beside me isn't empty anymore. And when she looks at me, really looks, I don't see the woman everyone used to talk about, or the age on her driver's license, or the scars we both carry. I just see home. The door opened months ago. I never left, and I don't plan to.